the Everything But Politics podcast.
Welcome back to the 176th edition of the Everything But Politics podcast. It is my honor to welcome the founder of Optimal Performance System, two-time NFL Pro Bowler, performance coach, and cognitive scientist, Dr. Julius Thomas. Julius, well, thanks for joining us. It is great to meet and be with you.
Welcome. Thank you guys for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, getting a chance to talk about leadership, the brain, cognition, and football is always exciting. So I'm hoping this is a really good episode for your listeners. I'm not competitive or anything.
Certainly. Well, I'm happy you mentioned leadership because that's exactly where I want to begin. Just recently, our home state of Indiana captured its first ever national championship with Indiana football, which I know you were following along. Totally extraordinary. When you see a guy like Coach Cignetti and his leadership style, what sticks out to you?
It's really interesting. I have gained an appreciation for coaches now that, I'm on the other side of being an athlete and really starting to understand like what makes some coaches special. And I think Cignetti, man, one of the things that for me is his consistency, right? The way he communicates, like it never changes, right? He's staying dialed in. And what that does is that allows his players to have a coach that's predictable. When you have a coach that's predictable, you understand what they want from you. That really helps you to have a lot of clarity. So then you can go function at your best. But then also like he's so dialed in. Like everybody makes fun of like the memes you see, and he's like, "No, I got to be even keeled the whole time."
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I also think it's interesting, right? Like the Nick Saban lineage, and talking about culture. How do you get the right people off the bus? How do you get the right people on the bus? But I would say the thing that stuck out to me the most is how he respects everyone's time, and I don't think that that's a common practice in coaching. And the way he described his coordinators having a work-life balance was something I didn't think was possible to have in coaching. But it's actually interesting because he's been able to keep the same coordinators for so long. And you got to ask, like, how? Like, what does the Indiana football look like if he has to continue to switch coordinators every couple of years like most other universities?
Yeah, it's interesting. So when you see something like it, the time management aspect you mentioned is really interesting because I'm sure you saw this, but the Seahawks coach, Mike McDonald, said he sees his son like once a week. You see that?
Yeah, I saw that.
What is, yeah. So like when you see something like that and then you hear about the time management within Cignetti's coordinators, what is the balance or the common
secret factor?
Yeah, what's the secret sauce there?
People ask me all the time, JT, would you go into coaching? And I say, no chance. I can't do it because I don't want to see my kids for 30 minutes a week during an entire football season.
Yeah.
For me, that just isn't, that's just not the journey I'm on. It's not the way I want to do parenthood. Obviously, if you're going to be an NFL head coach, you got to make certain sacrifices and it's challenging. But then you hear Cignetti say, no, we're out of there in the evening. We're going to be back in there about 6:37, but everybody's going home. And you go, wow, like what is he doing that allows them to be one of the highest, have some of the highest levels of execution of any team in college football, but they're not there all night. They're getting home in the evenings. They're getting time to spend time with their children, right? And it kind of makes you feel like, it's like a regular job, even though it isn't. So I know that every coach has their own kind of way of doing things, but I will say that I'm in favor of Cignetti's way of helping people get home so they can spend time with their families.
This episode of the Everything But Politics podcast is sponsored by Brick House Coffee Co.
For all my dark coffee lovers out there, Brick House Coffee has got you covered. Their black is a rich, bold profile for those who enjoy a bold cup with notes of dark chocolate. Now back to the show.
What are some of the differences now you playing basketball with that a basketball coach has compared to a football coach? Is football take up more time than basketball or vice versa?
Oh man, it's night and day. I remember when I first transitioned to football, I hadn't played football since 8th grade when I was switching to football right at the end of my senior year of college. And I remember everybody was like, yo, we got meetings. And I was like, what do you mean we got meetings? You mean like practice? And they're like, no, we got to be in meetings. And in football, it's meetings from 7 in the morning till 5 o'clock at night. Like you are constantly in meetings. Some of the differences are like in football, you go over every single play from the game before. In basketball, nowhere in the world, I'm sure, did they go over every single play from the game before. Now they'll pull some clips, um, they'll talk about some individual stuff, but not the whole team going over every single play. And then just the note taking and the responsibility for having like this extra level of execution is way different because the possessions are more valuable. In football, you get less.
True.
So in basketball, if you have a bad possession, you have a turnover, it's okay. But in football, could you imagine a team averaging 13 turnovers a game and being like, okay, you know, that's about normal.
Yeah, no, totally. It's such a there's two totally different leagues, right? With football, you get a shorter amount of games, meaning each one means a little more. At a NBA, college basketball, um, it just you don't get that same sense of urgency, I feel.
It's such a quicker game.
It's a quicker game. The games kind of mean less just given the quantity of them. But I want to pivot back to leadership, Julius. So being college basketball and then a tight end in the NFL, where did you learn and emerge as a leader? I would imagine it came more so after your playing career, being a father and an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's actually real. And I'll just be honest with you guys. I really avoided leadership for a long time in my life. My parents got divorced when I was really young, and I kind of got like pushed into this, like, hey, these are your brothers. Hey, you got to step up. Hey, there's this. And I just felt like it wasn't something that I wanted to do. And so when like these leadership opportunities would come up in life, I'd be like, nah, I don't really want to take that on. And the reason I didn't want to take it on is because I understand the responsibility of leadership.
Mhm.
If you truly want to step into a leader position, you have this responsibility of, helping people to get the results that they want, but then also caring for them. And that's tremendously difficult. And there's a lot of responsibility there. And so when I was a player, I got some amazing opportunities to learn from great coaches. Peyton Manning, who was the best leader ever that I've been around. I got to learn so much from how he did leadership. But leadership really I didn't fully lean into leadership until I became a dad. And then there was no way to avoid it. And there was a reason for it that I felt was really important to me. And ever since then, leadership has just poured in so many areas, becoming a founder of a business and having employees. So leadership is one of the hardest things to do. I think everybody likes to criticize leaders, but no one wants to talk about like that's not always a fun job.
No doubt. What did you learn about leadership from Peyton Manning?
Yeah. So there were so many things. And now that like I study leadership, now that I teach leadership, I just continues to more things get to revealed to me that weren't when I was doing it. But one of the things that he always did was he executed at the highest possible level he could. And then he held everybody accountable to try to match that level, right? Like, of course, he put more on himself than he had on us, but he wasn't lowering the level for anybody. I remember being 24 years old and playing football for 3 years in my life. And I was thinking like, man, Peyton is not about to let me get away with not understanding the complexity of the way he wants to play football. And if I want to get on this field, I need to match the level that he's holding me to. And that's extremely uncomfortable. And that's what most people don't want to do. And that's one of the things I learned about athletes is this willingness to do the things that is so damn hard to do and do it over and over and have nowhere to run and have no excuses. The other thing I learned from Peyton is when you have a great leader, he puts the team in a position for people to be their best. Everybody always gives me the jokes like, Omaha, Omaha, and Peyton was always doing this. And like, they're always asked, what is he doing? And I always say, well, what he was doing was going to the line and realizing that if we called the play that was in the huddle, that we would have had a bad play. And he took the responsibility to change the play to put us in the best play we could be in for that snap. And when he did that continuously, it felt really good to have a leader like that because you knew that he had done his work on the back end to make sure he was prepared at the highest possible level. So when things came up, we could adjust and then we could be in good plays. And that's what made us extremely successful.
Yeah, now I would think for you, a lot of avoiding that leadership as a young man and then being in that situation amongst such greats, a lot of that leadership just inevitably came from embracing that discomfort. Is that correct?
I mean, 100%. When you recognize that, like, there's two types of leadership, right? The first type of leadership is leading yourself, right?
Mhm.
And if you want to be a high level anything, you have to be able to lead yourself. And so that's what I was learning in my early 20s. You get to the NFL and you're around Hall of Famers, and you really want to be a part of what you see happening out there, but you have to raise your level, and you have to make sure that you're doing the right things, you're accountable, that you've studied, that you understand what's expected of, and you execute over and over and over again at a really high level of consistency. But then you get to take on this opportunity of leading others, and then now it becomes more demanding and more challenging. So
Mhm.
what I was unconsciously doing was learning how to lead myself, and then getting to observe what some of the best leaders did and how they showed up in these leadership positions. So then when I was about 30 years old and now it became my time to step into
Mhm.
leadership, I didn't have to start with a blank book, and I got to just copy what I learned from some of the best leaders.
Yeah, I'm sure you're very grateful
Yeah.
for that. You maybe didn't realize at the time, but reflecting a couple of years later, you're like, wow, I had the best teacher, the best lesson I could have possibly ever had.
100%, man. One of the things I say all the time is why I like doing leadership work and why I like working in performance. It's because I've had this blessing of being able to learn from some of the best people that do it. And
Mm,
when I work with companies or teams or organizations or individuals, I'm not just bringing what I learned from the psychology books over here. I'm not just bringing what I did on my own, but I'm also bringing this lived experience of getting to be around some of the most high performing individuals on earth. And
certainly.
that is what I'm extremely grateful for.
What are challenges you see leaders facing today?
Well, I spend a lot of time working with leaders now and a lot of time working with teams. And some of the biggest challenges, right, are how do you deal with a workforce that's really worn out, right? Like people for years have been saying, I'm
Mm,
overwhelmed. People have been saying, I'm burnt out. We know we have a huge rising mental health crisis, right? So you're dealing with people that are just not feeling up for it every day. Like one of the biggest things that we're seeing in a corporate space is presenteeism, and like there's absenteeism and there's presenteeism. And it means people are showing up, they're just not engaged. You're just not getting much out of them. And that's a huge problem for leaders because you have to figure out how can I get the most out of everybody on my team so that we can get the highest cumulative result. The other one is how do you keep people motivated and optimistic in a time like this? When you see Amazon laying
yeah.
people off, when you see Nike laying people off, when you see Meta and hiring freezes across the board, how do you maintain a culture where people can come in, be excited about what they do, feel connected to the people that they work with, and say, you know what, we're going to give everything we have left to go to try to create the best possible result for this business? That's
Mm.
extremely challenging. And a lot of leaders, um, they feel that weight, but then they also have their own weight.
Now, when you say something like that and there's a mental health crisis and people are burnt out and so on the contrary, do any of the people you work with take the approach, wow, if that's happening, winning's never been easier?
Well, I think that's interesting. So you'd have to explain to me more about what do you mean by winning has never been easier? Because actually, I kind of like where you're going, but I need you to help give me some more context.
Happy to. So if so many people are burnt out and unmotivated and have such little drive, that 5 to 10% that do, right? They have more opportunity because their competition and their peers aren't putting in the same effort or workload that they are.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So I don't think that leaders are viewing it as winning has never been easier because
Got it.
you got to think about the industry is still highly competitive. And so when you look at it on a large scale, it kind of starts to wash, right? So say you run a company, right? You have 10,000 employees. Now, there's going to be some employees that are extremely motivated. There's going to be some that aren't motivated. There's going to be some that are worn out. There's going to be some that they got the vitality to continue going on. But the other team has the same mix, right? What I like to help leaders understand is if you really want a competitive advantage, what if you created the best internal environment? What if you created the best mindset? What if you created the healthiest working conditions? What if you created the healthiest mental health? What if you turned all the knobs that you can still turn to get the best out of these people that you lead? That's what the Curt Cignettis are doing, right?
Okay.
Mhm.
Every
Got it.
person beat up, worn out on game 14, But if you're able to help your team have a little bit more juice and a little bit more gas because he does something like we have short practices, right? Those are little things that people miss, but what about how that's giving them a little 10 to 15% boost? And so these are the creative ways I think leaders can really start to create competitive advantages in a overall workforce that's pretty strained.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. So a lot of the leadership that you speak of, it's more so about helping and assisting rather than competing.
Mm, I would say that the best part about performance is you get to compete. And
Okay.
if you're going into performance and you don't have people that want to win, then you're going to struggle. I like to see them as both. And so Optimum Performance is a company that has a dual mandate. Our dual mandate at
Mm.
Optimum Performance is how do we maximize performance plus maximizing well-being. Oftentimes it's taught in an either or. So I understand like why your mind kind of drifts to that. It's like it's either
Mhm.
performance or it's well-being. And that's the dichotomy that's really started to hold people back in a corporate space. But if you think about it in actuality, it's both. And I need both to be at the highest possible level. And so when you're helping leaders understand, hey, here's the things you got to do to get the highest performance out of your people. But if you don't take care of them, you're going to lose performance. And an example I'll give you guys is if you found out that, you know, uh, Mendoza was not sleeping all night, eating unhealthy, not exercising, uh, not taking times to recover, having a shitty social network, would you be
Mm.
upset?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you'd be pissed because you'd be like,
Mhm.
how are we going to get performance out of you
Yeah, no
if you're
doubt.
not leading yourself in all the areas that matter? And so that's how I look at performance of optimal performance is you got to have the mindset, you got to have the discipline, you got to have the commitment. All of that has to be here. But we can't get maximum performance out of you if you haven't taken care of yourself. And so I've worked in community mental health, and I know a person that has depression or a
Mm.
person that is actually in what we say is like more of a medical burnout. You can't get the best of people. Just like if you're a coach and you have your entire roster in the training room because you want to run too many sprints after practice and they all blow hamstrings.
Mhm.
You've lost performance because you haven't created the environment. That's the big difference I saw between sports and business. In sports, you invest so much money in keeping people as healthy as they can be because you
Yeah.
know that's your best competitive advantage.
And those people who do have depression and struggle with mental illnesses, what tactics do you use to get them to perform at an optimal level?
Yeah. So unfortunately, when a person actually has a clinical diagnosed mental illness, you
Mhm.
need to be in a therapeutic setting and you need to work with a licensed professional to help you move through those symptoms so that you can get back to the place where you need to be so that you can go on and be the best of whatever it is. I don't even care. Like, I don't care if you're a CEO. I don't care if you want to be a senior executive. You want to be a mechanic. I've worked with people that, they didn't have the most prestigious jobs, but for them, it's hard to go to work and be the best clerk they can be. It's hard to go be the best school teacher you can be when you have some type of mental health disorder. So you need to go to
Mhm.
therapy and to be able to work through that. But oftentimes I try to help leaders understand this opportunity for increased performance to build a better workplace so that you can have people that when they come into this setting, they can go be the best they can be.
What was the inspiration behind starting Optimal Performance?
Now, it's actually a really interesting story. So I guess I would say two things happened. The first thing that happened was when I started to find what my purpose was. My whole
Mm.
life had been being an athlete and it was great. I had a lot of successes. I got to do a lot of cool things. I'm so blessed for the life that it's put me in. But I always felt like there was just something about me that I hadn't found. Something about me that just, who am I? What is it that I'm supposed to be doing? And that was really hard to explain to people when you're an athlete and you're starting tight end in the NFL and one of the best at what you do. And you tell them, hey, I still haven't found my thing yet. And people are like, no, I'm pretty sure you found your thing. Like, I'm telling you, this is it. But it wasn't for me.
Mm.
And so once I got the contract that I always wanted, it's like, okay, you make enough money. You don't have to make money anymore. It was an existential thing for me, and I was like, "Oh shit, what now?" My whole life, I had just been working and grinding because I wanted to get to this place where I could always provide for myself and give myself that security. And then I realized that there's these other parts of me that were suffering. And so I said, I got to do something about suffering. And so I went on my own journey to work through my own suffering. And then once I recognized that I suffered, I saw suffering in other people. And then so for the last 2 years in the NFL, I would say, somebody should help that guy, right? You see the guy spaz out on the sideline. He's slamming his helmet. Tears are coming out of his eyes over something. And you're like, yeah, that's not normal. There's more under there than just a dropped pass, a coach that said something about a play. Like, no, no, no. Somebody should help that guy. And that's what actually made me walk away from football, go back to school to learn how to help people. And then the second piece that got me to starting Optimal Performance is I've done some really cool stuff in my life. Like I've played in a tournament twice, Super Bowl, been a Pro Bowler, but like getting to wear a white coat in a hospital, I was like, okay, now I've really fooled people. Like this is kind of a dope experience. And I was working in the hospital for about 8 months, and we do year-long rotations. And so I'm sitting in here and I'm counseling people that have had all kind of illnesses and conditions. Like there's two hospitals, right? There's a hospital you guys go to, or like I went to before, where you go in, they take care of the thing and they send you out the next day. But then there's the rehabilitation hospital where you're going to be there 2 weeks minimum, up until 6 months. Like you can be there for a long time.
Mm.
And so I'm counseling these people and I'm educating them on health and things that they could have done to reduce the risk that they have that created this, or things that they can do to reduce the risk that this keeps being a thing.
And
Every single person told me the same thing. I wish
when
somebody
you're
would have told me this sooner.
when you're in the rehabilitation centers and you're talking with and trying to help these patients, is there a common theme amongst them?
Yeah. And then that's exactly what happened is most people aren't aware of the things that they can do to prevent the conditions they have. And that's what I studied as a health psychologist. I was constantly looking in literature, and then I learned that by using the 5 healthy lifestyle factors or behavioral health, we could reduce up to 80% of chronic illness and disease. And so I would be counseling these people, and every person would tell me the same thing. I wish I knew this sooner. I wish I knew this sooner. And then after about 50 people tell you, I wish I knew this sooner, you start to think, what does it mean to be a doctor in a hospital? Does it mean that like I'm going to wait for people to show up in the worst possible conditions and then try to do something about it? And then I thought about it as an athlete. Like, who wants to watch a game where your favorite team, Indiana, they just wait for the other team to score and then they run over there and they're like, oh, this was this play. They did this. And it's like, stop the scoring. Stop it. And so that's how I felt about helping people. Like I could work as a doctor for the rest of my life and I can try to treat or I can try to prevent. And so optimal performance became, how can I go give people the information they need beforehand? And who are the people that need it? And what's the way I can go give it to them? And then I combined it with performance. And that's why we have the dual mandate of performance and well-being. And then you get something that becomes a really strong package and creates a lot of win-win performance potentials.
Was there a moment in your life after your NFL career where a light bulb went off that you said you wanted to be a health psychologist?
Ask that question one more time because I missed a little bit in there.
Like, was there like a light bulb moment that went off that inspired you to become the health psychologist you are today?
Yeah, man. When I knew that I wanted to help people, I was like, I had a lot of anxiety about it, and um, I was really torn inside because here I am, I'm starting tight end for the Miami Dolphins, but then I feel like I'm really supposed to be helping people, and I didn't know how to handle that, and I also didn't know how I felt about walking away from something like the NFL when everybody was like, "Dude, are you crazy?" Like nobody walks away from millions of dollars. Nobody walks away from the status of this. Why would you do that? And I'm like, yo, but I got this passion and I feel my purpose going over here. And when I did it, I knew that I wanted to help people. I didn't know how. And so I had this, there's a school right on the same campus is where the Miami Dolphins practice. It's called Nova Southeastern University, where
Yep.
I got my degree from. And so one day I asked, I was like, yo, do they have a psychology department? I'm really interested in the mind. Can I just visit? And I met this guy named Dr. Robert Seifer, who's my mentor today. And he says, like, yo, if you're serious about retiring, when you're retired, you can come sit in my class if you want. And so when I retired as a first time in my life, I had nothing to do. And I would just go sit in his doctoral level classes and listen.
Wow.
And then
Cool.
one day he's like, JT, you ever think about getting a doctorate? And I'm like, well, now I am. And then I ended up deciding that that could be a path for me because it was going to let me help people and learn the mind. And that's how I ended up deciding to go back to school.
Beautiful.
I feel like you were so blessed to have had this signal, even in the midst of your career, and knew something bigger was coming. You were in the league for quite some time, and I would imagine a lot of your peers, they didn't have that same signal or calling, and they put all their passion and energy into this game that physically they won't be able to play one day. For those people that didn't have the same calling that you did, what do most of them do now, and how do they stay connected to the game or not stay connected to the game?
That's a tough question because I've for the last 7 years I've been working in transition. Um, I'm an advisory board member for the pro athlete community. I've done workshops, talks. I taught the psychology of transition, and it's so hard. I think it's one of the hardest things that a person can go through at any point in life. Right? It's hard if your parents move cities and you're like, dang, I got this crazy transition. It's hard after a divorce. It's hard after going from middle school to high school. You name it. But it's hard for athletes particularly, and there's a varied response to it. Some people can find their next thing and they love it and they're super happy and fulfilled. And some people really struggle to do that. Some people recognize that they get done and they have a life that they don't enjoy, that doesn't bring them the fulfillment, and they really struggle. So you can have athletes that take some time to find their next thing and they hit the ground running and they go off and they enjoy life. And you can have some athletes that really struggle and they never find their own thing. I mean, if you look at the suicide rates in the NFL over the last 10 years, the suicide rate has doubled for NFL football players. That's just a fact about how hard it is to transition in life. And a lot of guys struggle, unfortunately.
We talked a lot about the mental health of being in the NFL and being an athlete. I want to transition now to the physical health and how they go hand in hand, because I'm sure that the physical toll that takes on your life and body definitely relates to the mental health. And if they both aren't in check, that can lead to things like you just mentioned. How has that affected your journey and people you've seen in the NFL post their career in the NFL?
Huge. We know that exercise is something that's phenomenal for the cardiovascular system. It's phenomenal for the brain and continued brain development, and I could say fertilizer for neurons in the brain. Um, chronic pain, like chronic pain, is a problem for Americans, right? Chronic pain is one of the biggest reasons for the opioid crisis. Like, human beings do not want to live in pain every day. I did a
No.
lot of, a lot of pain management, therapy, counseling in the hospital. It's just hard for everyone. But the amount of chronic pain for NFL players is above the amount of chronic pain for
Mhm.
just your average American. It is extremely hard to wake up in pain. I mean, even for me, it's something I have to live with every day. That, like, this neck is going to hurt every day, no matter what you do. That knee is going to hurt. Your hip is going to hurt, and it's just part of your life because of how you've lived. And people that don't take care of chronic pain, if you ever stop moving, right? Like, one of the things I did was I didn't like working out. I still don't like working out. And so I was like, oh yeah, now sports are over. I don't have to work out. That's why we see these huge weight gains in athletes. And you're like, whoa, what happened there? I mean, sometimes we see the opposite and you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
how'd that guy get so skinny? But you start to see that if you don't take care of your exercise and your nutrition, you start to have mental and physical effects. You start to have more pain, you start to have worse mental health, and it becomes an extreme problem that we're really working on to try and help that for former players.
What's up, guys? One podcast, one song every week. Podcast on Mondays, music on Fridays. Check it out.
Well, Julie, something I believe we've become so desensitized to how vicious the NFL is. Just watching it every Sunday, it's casual in America. You're just watching your TV. You don't realize how big you guys are. Can you speak on the viciousness that is the NFL?
Yeah, no, it's something I laugh because people will tell me, like, how much football do you watch? And I'm like, I mainly watch it when I'm with, like, friends, family. Like, when I'm by myself, I'm more of like a basketball, soccer guy.
Okay.
But the way I try to describe it is, like, imagine somebody takes the biggest 5-year-old right? Like you guys could probably go to a preschool today and be like, whoa, that is a huge 5-year-old over there. That's going to be a big man one day. And somebody recognizes that. And they're like, hey, you come here. I want you to play this game. It's called football. And then you take the biggest 5-year-olds you can from all over a really big country like the United States of America. And then you start feeding them, you start training them, and you start teaching them to apply force. Every day in practice, we're just applying force. And then you get the best 10-year-olds and you're like, okay, now you guys are the big dogs. You guys come over here. And then you create this new area and you do that over and over and over. So by the time you get to a 25-year-old, this dude's been sleeping, eating, learning how to drive force in contact to another human being. And it's his job to get that human being on the ground. And I always laugh. I'm like, every time you see a defensive football player, if you're not scared shitless, your brain's broken. Like you're just taking a picture with the guy, you want to go have a drink with him, whatever. This is one of the world's greatest tacklers. His whole mastery in life is getting people on the ground that don't want to be on the ground. So on the other side, on the offensive side of the ball, you have people that train their whole life not to hit the ground.
Yeah.
And then you've got these two people that have these masteries that have been committed themselves completely to developing the muscle, the mindset, and the skills to either get people on the ground or not get on the ground. Now, could you imagine if you tried to take, like, who's the Walker guy for the Seahawks? If you guys walked into his house and you tried to get him on the ground, good luck.
Yeah.
But in the NFL, he's going on the ground at the end of every play. And that's what the NFL is. So when you want to think about what you guys see is even hits that is like, oh, that wasn't a bad hit. I'm like, did you see that helmet that went right in the side of that guy's back? He's going to feel that in the morning. It's not just the pops where you go, ooh. Man, you ever been down in the trenches and got your finger stuck between two helmets? And you wake up in the morning and the doctor's like, oh, you broke it in two places. Okay, here's a splint. You got to go to practice.
Crazy.
Well, being a cognitive scientist, if you could change one thing to reduce head injuries in the NFL, what would it be?
One thing to reduce head injuries in the NFL. You know, I mean, my opinion is, and I sit on some of the boards and I have a lot of the conversations with some of the medical teams and neurologists. And I think that we're trying to do a lot to reduce that. I think the Guardian caps have shown to be very effective. When you look at how many concussions they've reduced, just in like NFL training camp, like there's data on that. It's phenomenal. I think the other thing is really what they're doing to remove some of the targeting, whether you were the person that received the hit or you delivered the hit. I think that that's really good. But I do think that we need to study more and we need to create innovative ways to help reduce the inflammation in the brain that can build up. What that's going to be and how we can do it, I think that's what people on the cognitive and the neuroscience side are really working on. And you see like companies are trying to like get to what that solve is. And the other thing I would say, actually, no, here's what I always say. Here's what I would tell my sons or people in my family. Play like you only get one head. Don't play like you can replace the head on your neck. If you see the guys that have the most trouble with concussion and the most trouble with uh, injuries to the head and neck, they're playing with reckless abandon for their head. Like this is a very important, crucial part of your body. In jiu-jitsu, they teach you protect your head at all costs. Like jiu-jitsu is all about protecting your head and neck. And so the guys that don't play with that mindset, those are the ones that I imagine are going to have the most cognitive and neurological challenges later in life.
And in your entire career, how many concussions did you have, and how would you describe what a concussion feels like?
No, that's actually interesting. Luckily for me, I didn't have very many concussions. It just wasn't something that was like my challenge. I had different injuries.
Yeah.
So it's really hard for me to speak too much on what concussions are like. But mainly, I had two, and it was very interesting was which part of my cognition or my brain process got affected by the concussion. And so when you study neuropsychology, you understand that certain regions of the brain have certain makeups. Like you can see the brain back here, right? And like
Yeah.
certain regions of the brain, they do different things. And so if you take an injury to a certain region, you start to see certain deficits. And that's really what we study in neuropsychology. And so I had two concussions. One, um, I hit my head on the turf. I think it was in New York. And when I got up, I felt completely fine. The only problem was I could not see.
Ooh.
It was like looking. It was like when you're flying in a plane and you're just in the cloud, and it's
Yeah.
like there's just nothing around you but just like that white substance, moisture.
Yeah.
I came out the game and they're like, "How are you feeling?" I was like, "I'm feeling good, but I cannot see." And they're like, "What do you mean you can't see?" I'm like, "It's not black, but I can see nothing." Like I couldn't even see 12 inches in front of me. And I don't know how long it took, maybe like 4 or 5 minutes. And it came back and I was perfectly fine.
Mm.
But that was like a weird one. And then one time I got hit and I didn't, it's just funny because like you come in and out of like the moment. And so I got hit. And the next thing I knew, I was like just in the grocery store and I couldn't remember what I was in that aisle for. And I was like, damn, like you guys ever had that feeling like, why did I walk into this aisle?
Yeah.
And so I was trying to figure out and I was trying so hard to figure out why I was in this aisle. And then all of a sudden, slowly but surely, like all the rest of my senses started coming back. And it's like, dude, you're not in a grocery store. You're in an arena and you're laying on the grass. First off, get your ass up and stop trying to think about what cereal box you came in here to look for. This is a football game.
That's
And so
crazy.
those were the two ones where I noticed that like, wait, I just took a hit to the head where something felt different. Um, but those were the only ones that I had.
That's
Wow.
great. And you've been blessed compared to a lot of other guys too. So I can only
Big time.
imagine some of these other stories. Gosh.
Oh,
Well, yeah. I mean, you know best. You've been around. What's the craziest thing you've seen on the field?
so I mean, to me, I tell people all the time, like the head and the brain, these are long term
Mm,
um risks, right? Like
mm.
these are really long term risks. The craziest thing I've seen is somebody's leg or ankle get broken in half and the body part go in the other direction because that's a right
Mhm.
now nasty and that's
Yeah.
like a big time surgery. So when you see people get rolled up on and you see somebody's leg broken, a compound fracture, that's really nasty. Also, the people that get concussions and it's like they're in the fencing position or like stiff and flexing,
Yeah, they
and
can do
sometimes they make like the snoring noise. That's
Yeah.
pretty scary. Um, a neck injury or where a person was like, I've lost feeling to some body part, and you're like, oh, well, I hope that comes back. So there, yeah, there's
Frightening.
rough
Yeah.
injuries that can
Mhm.
happen in football.
And having 3 boys, would you let your boys play football?
Yeah, no, I actually think that like I want them to play football, but
Yeah.
I'm going to tell them, hey, there's certain positions I like better for you. Like
Yeah.
if you're gonna play football, let's try to get to certain positions. The other one is like, dude, if you're gonna be a tackler, um, let's make sure you get trained how to tackle the right way. I mean, I think some guys like they should do teaching tapes of how some tacklers take care of themselves and the person they hit. I mean, every game you'll see a guy that makes a great shoulder tackle, and the announcer will be like, "No, that's awesome tackling." And so I think that's a really critical component. And I'll tell
Mhm.
them what I told you guys. You only get one body. None of
Yeah.
these parts are replaceable. So
Mhm.
take care of yourself. And there is probably a number of concussions that they would have before I'd be like, no, it's time for you to switch playing sports. Like
Mhm.
people ask me how many concussions. I say I don't know, but how many ACL injuries should you have, and how many surgeries on that ACL before you know, like, okay, this ACL is it's never coming back. The same with concussions. Like I see guys get two concussions in a season. I'm worried, right? Now,
Yeah.
if I see a guy get two concussions a season and 2 to 3 back-to-back seasons, that's worrying. And so
Mhm.
you only get one hit brain, and if you start to have multiple injuries to it, then you need to start asking like, "Okay, how well do I think I could bounce back?" But no, I'd let my boys play, and I'd be happy to watch them.
Yeah. Uh, Another concern, not just in America, but in the NFL, is how prevalent is opioid usage amongst active players?
Mm, I think it just depends on generation. So I
Okay.
imagine that maybe in the '90s, early 2000s, it was probably pretty high. I think that some of the laws around dispensing prescription medication was very different. And I think that we've seen a huge change in healthcare
Hmm.
across the board. It's very
Agreed.
hard for people to get opiates now. It's hard for people to get opiates in hospitals now. Like, people do not want to prescribe them. When I was in the NFL, I was not prescribed opiates. We got more of the NSAIDs, the Celebrex, the naproxen, um, so your anti-inflammatory type stuff. So I mean, after surgery, you can get some opioids, but they're not going to keep filling that prescription. And I think that that's why you've seen a lot of the really big stories come out about opioid use change. Like, I think Brett Favre, right? You hear his story and what he went through, and how he used those substances to be known as the toughest guy in the NFL, and you feel terrible for him because
Hmm.
opioids are very dangerous. And
Yes.
I just, I'm happy that we've made the changes, both in sports and in healthcare, to really reduce how frequently we were prescribing opioids.
Well said.
How has the recovery process in football changed with this more health conscious generation, more holistic healing techniques? Have you seen that been applied in the football today?
Oh my goodness. It is one of the reasons why I truly believe that having the healthiest human beings creates the best performance. The
Hmm.
kids nowadays, it's night and day. I can't, it's hard to even describe. Like, the kids now know I gotta sleep. Like, when I was in college and I was in the NFL, we were not trying to sleep. Like, right? We were like, "We're going out. We're about to go have some
Yeah.
fun. I'll sleep when I die," type mentality. But now these kids are like, "Nah, man, I gotta get in bed. I gotta get 9 hours. This is best for me." Nutrition is so much different now. Like, the athletes are educated. They understand what's healthy eating, what isn't, and they're able to really step up what it looks like from nutrition, from recovery. Now all athletes are like, "Yo, I need my massage, I need my dry needling, I need my deep tissue work," like, you name it, they are dialed in on their recovery. And then you see all the crazy, like, interesting, fun stuff, hyperbaric oxygen. You'll see really cool stuff like different direct currents, stimulating currents. There's, like, now a device modality for anything. Like, my living room looks like a training room because I had a lot of injuries, so I have every digit Gasmo anybody could ever need.
And how does Dr. Julius Thomas think differently than Julius Thomas?
Oh my goodness. One of the best things you can get is perspective in life. And it's probably so cool for you guys, right? Like, for this to be like, what, your 175th episode, you
Yep.
guys have changed after 175 people have come on and just made you aware of whatever it is they do, how they
Hmm.
got there. So you cannot go back to being the same as you were. And so for
Correct.
me, when you get a perspective and you spend 7 years in a graduate school program doing everything from being a professor to working in community mental health to working in hospitals to training doctoral students to sitting in therapy for 4,000 hours, you
Gosh,
really start to see the world differently.
No
And the
doubt.
greatest difference for me is compassion. Um, when you're an athlete, you're in a very sequestered existence. You go to this same building that's really protected. A lot of people aren't coming in and out. You're around like hyper focused people on this one thing. You're around a small group of people. And I did it for 30 years of like kind of just being off in these spaces where people are trying to go be great athletes that a lot of other people don't go to. And then when I got into graduate school, it was like the lens to life opened and I started to see life from different perspectives. One of the best things I say is, one year I was hanging around with millionaires and billionaires. And then the next year, I was sitting with people that couldn't afford $15 for an hour of therapy. And I got to see people at a community mental health economic level. And I got to hear their stories and hear what they went through and hear what life has been like for them. And I was like, I got compassion for you. If I went through what you went through when I was a kid, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. If I
Mhm.
had the kind of upbringing and traumas that people had, like, I wouldn't get to be here in this seat. And so I really learned that people go through a lot, the health conditions, the mental health conditions, the suffering is immense in this world. And like, that's why I got my hat. It says hope. And
Mhm.
that's why I love what I do today, to get to show up for people and be there for them when they're in really tough spots. and then try to work to create a healthier world. So I've changed a lot, man. It was one of the best things that I've done for myself, and I'm happy that I made the decision to go back to school.
I'm happy. I'm happy to hear that. And Julius, you're clearly very well spoken. So something I'm curious about when you go back to yourself as a player, watching film, watching every play, seeing this, seeing that. Now, as a public speaker, teacher, and entrepreneur, do you go back and listen to yourself and watch yourself present?
Yes, yes. So
What's tougher for you?
I would say that's a good question. Which one is tougher? Um, it's hard now because I'm a rookie again, or maybe I'm like at the
Yeah.
beginnings. So when you're watching yourself as a veteran, you're like, okay, like I'm playing really well. Like, yes, there are things that I got to work on. There's things I made mistakes on, but like you're doing this at the highest level. Now it's hard because I'm like, wait, why did I do that? Or why did I say that? Or how did I not think of this thing to say in that moment? And so it's always challenging to be a beginner. And it's one of the things that I've learned now on my third career. Like, it's hard as hell going from being a basketball player to a football player, hard as hell
Mhm.
going from being a football player to a doctor, hard as hell going from now becoming a doctor to an entrepreneur. And you just get frustrated with the mistakes you make. You look at the stuff you did 6 months ago and you're embarrassed to see it because you're like, what are we doing? Um, but it's always fun for me. I believe in the process of film, just in everything you do.
Mhm.
Going back, watching yourself, having a pursuit of perfection, but not a manic need for perfection. And like some people, they get confused on that. And I tell people, no, great people try to do it perfect, knowing they'll never do it perfect, but they don't give up because they'll never do it perfect. But if you think that like I'm gonna be perfect and you're pissed until you're perfect, then you're never going to enjoy it and it's always going to be frustrating for you. And so I really try to remind myself of that. Like, I'm still a psycho about performance. Like, okay, go pursue perfection. But how to do it is very different as an entrepreneur than as an athlete. An athlete, it's like clear. There's like a very structured. Do this. As an entrepreneur, it's like we just got to try stuff.
Yeah. Well, as given what you know now about the brain, are there methods you tell yourself that you know are psychologically more effective to be productive?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. I did not have the education I had then. I made a lot of mistakes, mainly emotionally, if I'm honest. And I
Mm,
think that when I get to work with a lot of high performers, then I get to talk with a lot of people. Really, the biggest challenge we all go through is emotional. Like, how do you handle emotions? What is the things that you tell yourself that create or don't create emotions? Like, that's the kind of stuff that really trips us up. So, really having a mindset, right? What's crazy is I had a good mindset, but my mindset is so much better now than it was when I was an athlete because now I understand how to create a mindset. I understand how what you think and what you do starts to affect your physiology, starts to affect your emotionality. And now I have the strategies to work through those things. And so what happened for me mentally was I went to a whole new level.
mm.
That wasn't something I really expected to go or to happen. But I'm really appreciative I did it because my mental and emotional state is far greater and healthier than it was when I played.
Beautiful. I appreciate that perspective and your what's the word? Willingness to admit that you were wrong and have grown. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, man.
And
I think vulnerability is important. And oftentimes people
Mhm.
look at my life and they go, well, you probably don't have my problems or you probably don't feel what I feel. And I'm like, nope. I feel the whole kaleidoscope of
Mm,
emotion, man. The fear, the anger, the sadness, the rejection, the disappointment, the impatience, right? Like all of it.
yeah.
And
Yep.
there's no amount of money, there's no status that takes that away. And we've heard about the stories of suicide and substance abuse from some of the most famous, successful people on earth. And that's because of emotional pain.
Mm.
Awesome.
As this journey is underway and has a long road ahead with Dr. Julius Thomas, the entrepreneur, the cognitive scientist, what is your ultimate goal with the optimal performance system?
Yeah. So sometimes I tell people the immediate goal because sometimes it's hard to tell people what your ambitious goal is. But I got to be more vulnerable and I got to put things out there, even if I never hit them in my life,
Sure.
because I can be honest about what I'm chasing. And the reality is that performance is broken. And I don't know why more people aren't talking about it. I think it's because everybody wants to sell performance and it's harder to sell something that is broken. But the reality is in the United States of America, we have the highest GDP on earth and we have the worst health and well-being of all the developed nations. And this disparity to me is not American exceptionalism, right? Like I'm an American exceptionalist. I think that Americans want to be the best. We push ourselves to be the best, and that's good. That's a good culture to live in. That's why I live in performance, and I always want to stay there. But if we can't move this up, then we got to look ourselves in the mirror and be like, you know, what are we really about? If we can't decide, I want to be great from performance and I want to be great from well-being, then is it just we want to be great or we just want to be greedy? And so that for me is what I want to see with optimal performance. I want to be one of the leading companies that's creating that change, that's helping that disparity reduce and helping us usher in this new version of performance, a more educated version of performance, not just a run hard, hit hard, go like, yes, go hard, but can you go hard in a way that allows you to stay healthy? Similar to the question you guys asked me about young athletes that are going, like, they still want to be MVPs, champions, all-stars, Pro Bowlers, but they know that, oh, if I'm healthy, it's actually going to help me get there better. How do we translate that to greater society? And then how do we give people the tools, strategies, platforms, and education that we need to go do it? And so my ambitious goal is I would love for America to be number one in gross domestic product always. But can we get to like 5 in health and well-being? Like, do we have to just always like get our ass kicked by the Scandinavian countries and the European countries?
Uh-huh.
Like, can we be like
Love that.
best offense in the league and like top 5 defense or vice
Yep.
versa instead of like the
Absolutely.
disparity being so big?
That's great.
So good. Well, Julius, thank you for all the work you've done and are doing. Really incredible to hear and learn more about. I've been looking forward to this conversation. It absolutely lived up to the expectation. So thank you for joining us on the Everything But Politics podcast.
Thank you.
Those listening, they want to learn more about you and all your work. What's the best way to pursue that?
No, awesome. It's been a great conversation. Thank you guys for giving me this opportunity to have a conversation with you guys about, a little bit of my history, the things that I want to do in the future and kind of how I got there. If people want to learn more about myself or my work, you can go to Optimal Performance System on Instagram, or you can go to Optimal Performance on LinkedIn. We're always producing content there. You can find Julius Thomas, Julius_Thomas on LinkedIn, on Instagram, Julius Thomas on LinkedIn. Julius Thomas on TikTok, right? We have all the platforms, so you can find the things that we're producing and putting out there, and it's all about what we talked about today. Like, how do you go crush it in life, but do it in a sustainable way where you don't have these strokes and these cardiovascular events that happen, earlier than you need to, like the patients I used to work with in the hospital.
Well, Dr. Julius Thomas, thank you for sharing your story and allowing us to learn with you. So look forward to keeping in touch and wishing you and your family nothing but the best.
Thank you.
moving
Thank you
forward.
so much.
Keep shining your light, brother.
Appreciate it. Let's do it. Wishing you guys all the same.